Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of On Cloud Anime, where today is a bit unusual because normally I kind of go around talking about a bunch of different animes, but for some reason, I just felt the need to talk about this singular one. And I think that it's because out of every anime that I've ever watched, I've never had an on and off relationship like I have with Solo Leveling. You see, Solo Leveling is an anime that came out earlier this year, but it was originally a manhwa, which if you're not familiar, it's like a Korean comic, essentially. And Solo Leveling straight out the gate was something that was really popular. It is seen as like the golden child of manhwa, if you will. And so because of that, its popularity reigned supreme, meaning that people around me started to read it more often, and they would recommend it to me more often. That led to me reading Solo Leveling for the first time, getting to the third chapter, and dropping it. I don't know what it is. I think that it just never hooked me, but I gave it multiple shots and I could never see myself getting past the third chapter every time. And it wasn't going to help that the new anime was coming out and I already had to be the contrarian saying that I wasn't that interested in Solo Leveling to friends that were also just getting into the manhwa shortly before the anime was coming out and praising it to hell and back. So what did I do? I sucked it up, watched the anime, and then dropped it after the first 2 episodes. Wow. Yeah, that didn't help me going throughout the year. Everyone always trying to recommend me Solo Leveling. And then I had this one friend who tried recommending it and he said, dude, Solo Leveling is like one of the best animes I've ever watched next to Jujutsu Kaisen. And praising Jujutsu Kaisen that high was kind of crazy, so I didn't think much of it. And I said, hell no, I'm never watching Solo Leveling if you're willing to praise JJK that high. But getting my JJK hating ass out of the way, we move on to months later. And when I say months later, I mean September. So yeah, pretty late into the year. My brother came over to New York and he decided to, blast his anime list because me and him are just like that. And one of the songs that came on was the opening for Solo Leveling. And I had always remembered the opening being pretty good, so I was perfectly fine listening to it. I was vibing with it. But then my brother started to glaze Solo Leveling out of nowhere. And my initial thought was to roll my eyes a bit because I was like, there's no way. But it didn't matter because that day he said that if I hadn't watched Solo Leveling, he was going to force me to sit down and binge every last episode. And I said, fine, as long as we watch it in dub. And the reason for that is because I remember seeing Alex Lee play the main character as Sung Chun-woo, and if you're not familiar with Alex Lee, he is a juggernaut in the voice acting industry. He came to rise from Demon Slayer playing Zenitsu, and now he's in like almost every project you can think of. Sometimes I'd be seeing like the most random characters, and Alex Lee is just there. I don't know what to tell you. But he's definitely earned his place because holy shit, the amount of things this man can do is kind of insane. But I'm also fine seeing Alex Lee everywhere because that dude is genuinely hilarious. He had a story talking about when he was new to the anime industry. He saw the auditions for Rent a Girlfriend and he purposely tried to bomb the auditions and somehow ended up getting the role. So if you want to see a man who started off as a guy who was forced to voice Kazuya go into the main character, Sung Chun-woo, it's kind of insane and kind of funny as well, which is why I'm saying it. But essentially, if Alex Lee wasn't going to be a part of my Solo Leveling binge, then I wasn't going to be there at all, which my brother happily complied to, and he didn't have any issues with a dub. So finally, after putting the series off for 2 years, my Solo Leveling journey finally began for a third time. I remember watching the first 2 episodes again and looking over and seeing that my brother somehow fell asleep. His excuse was that it was very warm in the room and he just knocked out. So yeah, that wasn't looking very promising to me at first. So I ended up making it to the 2nd or 3rd episode. I can't remember which it was. It was after the first dungeon, which was the furthest I had ever made it in all my binges of Solo Leveling, if you can even call it that. I think the main push away from me was that I thought that the show, because from what it was being described as, it was just a show where a guy constantly got stronger and then like occasionally talked about RPG mechanics. And that didn't really sound interesting to me, but it definitely exceeded my expectations. So immediately, right off the bat, I see a bunch of scenes where it's kind of what I expected out of solo leveling, but I was also fine with it because the fight scenes in solo leveling are fucking immaculate. The fact that we are getting season 2 so soon is insane because the things that my eyes witnessed on screen in the first couple of episodes, such as like the snake dude, oh my god. For the most part, Solo Leveling was a pretty cool show, and I didn't think much more than that up until episode 6 decided to do something crazy. So the way that Solo Leveling starts off is that the main character, Sun Chinu, is like a weak hunter where you go into dungeons and you kill enemies and you just loot. And he's known as the weakest hunter because when you awaken to your hunter skills, it's really just RNG. And there's this thing called a second awakening where you can power up, but it's very rare. And the main character, after surviving the first dungeon, ends up getting something that's even greater than a second awakening. And it's kind of what leads him to get stronger and end up being more based, I guess, because he starts off as a weak dude with a high-pitched voice, like the scrawny kid you see, into the poster boy of Solo Leveling. And he was a kind person who didn't understand the consequences of the world too much until he was finally tested in episode 6. You see, he didn't really want people to know of his powers yet because it would probably cause a disturbance in the flow of the world and people would probably end up targeting him. And one thing that plays in his favor is that his stats say that he's still an E rank, which is the lowest rank you can have. So no one's going to suspect him for being as strong as he actually is. So he used that to his advantage by pairing up with people that need extra members to go into a portal. And that's where episode 6 starts off, where he pairs up with a group of people going into a portal. And originally, it's suspicious that they're willing to let an E rank join their team, but it's whatever. Up until they get to the boss, where it's finally revealed that the group that they went with decided to leave them behind so that they could raid all the loot. And so Sung Chinu and some random dude played by Midoriya's English voice actor are stuck in this cave, trapped for a rank B boss fight. For most, this is where the story ends. But not Sung Chinu, because after a crazy boss fight, he manages to kill it, and the party suspects that, oh, everyone's dead, so let's go back and take the loot. To which their unpleasant surprise, they realize that both the people they left for dead are still alive. So they decide, oh, we could take this E rank and this C rank. And that leads on to when Sung Chinu gets a mission. You see, when he beat that first dungeon, he got a special ability where he could actually rank up, which is something that not everyone can do. He could do missions that allow him to boost his stats. And this mission said, if you don't kill these people, then you are going to die. That is the punishment for not completing the task. So Sung Chinu is forced to kill all these men. And the way that it is done was actually just cinema. Like, it was incredible. The music, the action, the cinematography, the voice acting, all of it. And it truly set the tone for Solo Leveling because I didn't really know what I was getting into. Before this episode, it was just a guy doing missions to level up. And now realizing that the world could be against him, and if he isn't ready to fight back, it's over for him. So by the time this episode was over, my mind was just blown, and I could not wait to watch the rest of the season. And I would say that there is one more moment that is worth talking about, and that was the Yggdrasil fight. So this was a very popular scene within the manhwa. And, you know, with the Japanese voice actors, people aren't really concerned because Japanese voice actors are always just solid when it comes to the things they do. They're always just next level because of how particular Japanese voice acting is. But dub has always gotten a bad rap. So there goes people that say things on the internet that they shouldn't be saying, such as sending death threats to Alex Lee, saying, if you mess up this scene, they're gonna do things. And most people would cower in fear, reasonably so. Alex Lee took a different approach. He literally said he was going to fumble the scene on purpose if more people kept on saying things. He said, instead of saying Igris, arise, I'm going to say wakey wakey, eggs and bakey, erect, or any other things. So because of that, I was excited to see how this would play out. I obviously knew he wasn't going to change the lines, but it was just like a scene that was always going to stand out to me, to the point where every time we watched an episode, I would go, Icarus, arise. And in Solo Leveling fashion, the episode was of course hype as shit, so I have no real complaints. But yeah, that's really everything I have to say about Solo Leveling. The main reason I'm turning this into its own episode is because I have a unique relationship with Solo Leveling, and the fact that there were so many times where I was just so uninterested in the premise that everyone was explaining, and it's one of the few times where an anime has genuinely blown away my expectations so far. Going into Solo Leveling, I thought I was going to end up giving it like a 6 out of 10 with like 10 out of 10 animation, but don't know how to feel about this. I think that it's still not one of my favorites, but it is a solid 8 out of 10 if I had to give it a number. The reason why I also bring it up is that I've heard so many people talk about Solo Leveling as like one of the best new anime to be out there, and I can see why they feel that way, but unfortunately, I can't say that I fully feel the same way. There's just so many great shows that came out, especially this year. I know that Solo Leveling is probably going to be in the anime awards, but I'm not going to root for it because when shows like Free Ren exist, I just can't not vote for Free Ren. And you may be wondering, why aren't you saying Oshinoko? Do you really think people are going to vote for Oshinoko? I would vote for Oshinoko, but other people won't. So I'm voting for what I think the best anime besides Oshinoko is, which is Free Ren. But not even just that. There's the return of Bleach for its 1,000-year Blood War arc, and it is genuinely going crazy right now. And Dandadan is one of the most unique shows that I've seen in a bit. And seeing how the emotions are displayed throughout the show is making me love it very fast. And I know I said it before, but Oshinoko's second season? Oh my god! If you didn't see the play arc, you need to see it. You need to watch it, please. But yeah, Solo Leveling was an amazing show, but I still don't think that it's as good as everyone else is praising it to be. That being said, if you do love action-oriented shows, then you would be doing yourself a disservice in not watching Solo Leveling. Anyway, those are my final thoughts on Solo Leveling. If there are any opinions you agree or disagree with, feel free to comment them down below. And if you want to see more of me, then go to my YouTube channel at Photaru, where I do a bunch of random things related to anime. And I will see you later.